Hi everyone, it's Nathaniel again. Today I want to talk about a couple of books by Yoko Tawada, The Emissary and Scattered All Over the Earth. Uh, the Emissary is the first in the, I don't know if it's a series, but it definitely has a theme that goes along with it. It's essentially about a young boy named Mumai and his great-grandfather Yoshiro, who is raising him. And in Japan, everything has become, they've all gone to isolationism, and they are actually even outlawing the use of language from foreign lands. And so there's all these concepts and ideas that Yoshiro has, and as he passes some of them on to Mumai, he tells him that we can't use those anymore because of the different restrictions that are being placed. Now, meanwhile, the reason why these restrictions have taken place is because of these various sort of climate catastrophes that have happened, and the poisoning of the rivers and the water and everything. And so Yoshiro, who is, I believe, at the beginning, he's about 108 years old. The elderly are actually the ones doing everything because all the young have become weakened and can't do anything, and their bones are weak, their bodies are weak. And so the elderly, which are classified in different forms of elderly, like young elderly and middle elderly and then old elderly, and they just keep on working. So they can't die, because if they do, then everything stops working. And it was really interesting because and I'll get into that with Scattered All Over the Earth, but they sort of turn everything on its head in the sense of who is strong and who is weak now, and who is fast and who is capable. And the use of the language trope as it goes through, talking about how things are referenced or how they're no longer referenced, or what is acceptable with, even food products being moved around in the country. And so it was really fun. But Scattered All Over the Earth is the one that really drew me in. Now, I picked this up because of the bright, shiny colors that were on the book, honestly. And I got into it not knowing really what it was about at all, but found it to be such a literary genius, honestly, because she turns everything into a blur. The lines that cater to what it means to be of a nationality, to be a gender, the role of parents, what friendships are. It talks a lot about language and how everything has become kind of porous. So it starts off with Newt from Denmark, and he's watching a show. He's a linguist, and he's watching a show, and these people are talking about lost countries. So things like the USSR doesn't exist anymore. The Czech Republic doesn't exist anymore. And then Haruko comes on, and she actually, she's from Japan, but Japan doesn't exist anymore. It's the island has gone away, which is part of what kind of was happening with the Emissary as it was moving away from the mainland and all these catastrophes are happening. It just has a logical sense that ultimately it disappears. Well, Haruko, because she has become a climate refugee, she has also developed a new language that covers kind of all of Scandinavia, and it's called Panska. And it's sort of a halting sort of, it almost sounds like a haiku in a lot of ways, the way that she talks. And so Newt becomes fascinated by her, wants to meet her and, to study this language that she has developed. And then in the process, they decide, well, hey, let's go find someone who speaks your language, this kind of lost language. So they end up going into Europe and different places. I won't go into it. And they end up meeting up with some different people. Akash is Indian, and he presents himself as a woman. I don't know that he is actually transgender the way that they say it, because it's not really that he has transferred. He just presents that way. He has he takes a liking to Newt right away. Everyone is kind of like, this is a guy, but he dresses like a woman. It's kind of funny. And then they meet up with Nora because they're going to this sushi demonstration, because Nora's putting this thing on. She's met this guy named Tenzo, who has studied this aspect of sushi, and so they're hoping that he will be someone that Haruko can speak to in her native language and everything like that. Well, as everything develops, start learning that Tenzo is not even Tenzo. Tenzo is Nanook, who is an Eskimo from Greenland, but he's presenting himself as an Asian person, specifically Japanese, but they never actually say that. And so, again, you have this blurred line of ethnicity and even the name, and then they talk about different food things, and so they go to a place and end up getting Indian pizza, and then the way that the sushi is done, it's being made by non-sushi makers and everything. So they continue on with this travel back and forth, trying to find where Tenzo is, because he's left Nora, and then they finally hook up with him, discover that he is Nanook, and then we find out that Newt's mother, who has been, even the blurred line for what parentage is, she and Newt don't really get along very well, and she has been taking care of this student who has been going and doing different things and doesn't really know where he wants to go, but is kind of utilizing her resources so that he can go through school and things like that. Well, it turns out she becomes distraught because she loses contact with him. She doesn't know where he went. She knows that he was going on vacation and then he kind of disappeared. Well, it turns out it's Nanook, right? And so she gets involved, and what the connections between each of these people are is very confusing. But then they all decide, hey, we're going to go and find this guy, Susanoo, who Tenzo has heard about, and he is making sushi in, I think, France. I can't remember. But they're going to go find him, and Haruko will be able to speak with them and everything. Well, of course, once they get there, what happens? Well, we have another blurred thing. Susanoo doesn't speak anymore. He has stopped speaking. And at first they're considering they're going to take him to this place and help him because he's sick or whatever, and then ultimately they decide not to because he's not sick. He has his own language, which is a non-language. He basically just sits there and looks at them as they are talking through their different processes. But I just found it really fascinating because she takes every single concept that she brings up, and you start having like this porous borders where they are going in and out of these different places, and there's some demonstration that's going on in one of the countries, and it's really about nationalism again, which of course harkens back a little to the Emissary, and where all of the different roles that people have, whether it's Akasha's gender, designation, or the whole sushi thing, or like I said, the Indian pizza, and the way that the languages are, because as they're coming into these different countries, different people speak different things, and some of them are multilingual, and so when they are communicating, they're not even communicating in their native language. And the whole point of the story is trying to find someone that Haruko can speak to in her native language. And when she, of course, meets up with Tenzo or Nanook, he can't really speak very well because she notices right away that he's speaking, textbook, kind of halting textbook Japanese. So it's really fascinating. There's a lot to unpack in this story. And I'd be interested because I think that this is part of a trilogy that's being written. So I'd like to see what she ends up doing with later aspects of it, whether they're separate but with the same theme, or if it's the same characters, because I found it to be really funny and it was really enjoyable, and I highly recommend it. So if you have a chance and you see this bright pink and yellow and green cover at your local bookstore or library, pick it up. It's a fun read. You'll get through it. All right. Have a good afternoon.